video is a follow-up to my previous video that received a lot of comments, and I received a lot of emails with one question in particular. Now, my last video, I showed how I was able to make 60 little statues just using one bag of pre-mixed cement. And so I had a lot of people asking me, hey, if I wanted to start making statues myself to sell as a side hustle or maybe get into business, what exactly do I need? What kind of cost am I looking at to get things started? So that's what I'm going to share in this video, and I'm going to do a quick couple videos after this that basically go through everything so that if you've never done statuary yourself, you should be able to be ready to go by the time this is done. However, I have two disclaimers. First of all, my videos are not end-all be-all. I have a lot of good advice that I'm going to share. I've done this my entire life. My parents were in the business, my brothers. I know tons of people in the business, so I can share a lot. But there are other ways to do this business other than what I'm going to show you. I'm simply going to share a way that I have learned to do it very cheaply and effectively. Second of all, this is not a get-rich type of business scheme. This is going to require effort and patience on your time. I can teach anybody how to make a nice statue. I cannot teach people how to use proper business sense. So I've known people that make statues, but then they had no clue what to do with them to make money. So I'm going to give you some tips in that, but I can't guarantee that this is for everybody. So having said that, the first two things I need to mention, I'm not going to cover paint. One of the reasons why you may not even want to paint your statues, just sell them unpainted. Second of all, that requires its own separate video where I can show the equipment needed for that, processes, how to paint to keep it cheap. But I will give you a little spoiler alert. When it comes to the paint, the cost is way less than you're probably thinking it would be. Second, I am not going to discuss in this video about a workspace. I don't know what kind of space you have to work in, but all you really need is just a table in the corner of your garage, or maybe a little covered tent in your backyard. You don't need a big workshop. You don't need to rent a work building to do this. My goal is to help people start small, and that's my advice. Start small and grow from there. So having said that, let's get going on with the video, and let's talk about the number one investment that you're going to have to make, and that is the molds themselves. So I'm going to go change in my work clothes, and we're going to go look at some molds. All right, it's time to talk about the molds, and the molds will be the main investment that is required to start making your own statuary, but it doesn't have to be a big investment. Now, first of all, let me explain. Molds are reusable. I didn't realize until recently that there's folks out there that thought molds were used one time and then they were garbage. No, you get a properly made mold, it can be used dozens upon dozens, possibly hundreds of times, maybe lasting for years. There's no exact science as to how long one of these molds will last, but they last a long time when they're used properly. So you will get a lot of product out of a single mold. Also, when it comes to molds, there's all sorts of designs and styles. Now, obviously, designs, there's thousands of different designs for different statues, but the molds come in a lot of different materials themselves. There's aluminum molds, there's PVC plastic molds, but today we're going to mainly be talking about rubber and fiberglass molds because those are the most common, they're the easiest to use, and they're actually the most cost-effective overall. They're actually the only kind of mold I now use these days. Our company, back in the day, we used every type of mold, but a couple years ago, I sold off all of our other style of molds, and I only will work with rubber and fiberglass just because they're so much nicer to work with. Now, these days, it's actually very easy to find molds. We have a thing called the internet. You just do a search. You'll come up with all sorts of companies, individuals that make molds. Just be wary. Do your research. Some companies have great molds, but they charge an arm and a leg for them. Other individuals will charge what seems to be too good to be true kind of prices, and usually they are. So you have to make sure you're finding a place that can actually provide a decent mold. Now, of course, most of you know that I sell molds. I'm not a huge company, but I have a few hundred designs of medium to small size molds that I work on nowadays. So because of that, I'm going to show you a couple of mine so I can give you kind of an idea what you can look for as far as price. Now, as far as rubber fiberglass molds, for me anyway, I have them in two styles. There's the rubber only molds, and then there's rubber with a fiberglass backing, or, it's mostly fiberglass. It's a composite fiberglass that I've come up with. Now, the reason there's two different styles, I have quite a few styles of statue designs that can be done with just a rubber only mold. You do have to pack it in sand or some other type of material since there's no backing, so they require a little more time, but you can still get them to work. These are very cheap in comparison to other molds. The smallest of these start at $20. Most of them are in the $30 to $40 range, and some of the bigger ones go up to about $60, $65. Now keep in mind, you can use these again and again and again, so you only have to cast a handful of statues out of one mold and it's already paid for itself. So rubber only are a great way to go in cheaply to start statuary. However, the one bad thing about these is, other than them taking a little more time and effort to work on, is the fact that they are kind of limited. Bigger statues, stuff that has more detail, things that require seams, those can't actually work as a rubber only. So that's when you need a mother mold or a backing. So this in here, this is the rubber mold. This is actually an old used one that it's my own that I use to make these statues here. But because of the detail in it and because of the pointed hat, this really needs a backing to hold it in place. So you have the rubber mold inside, a backing in it, and then you know it's going to come out perfectly shaped every time. Now a mold this size on our website generally runs anywhere from $150 to $175, maybe just under $200. Almost all of our molds are in that price range, with just a few going over. Keep in mind, if you pay let's say $170 for this mold, this statue here, unpainted, you can easily sell for $25 to $40. Painted, I have places that take this painted statue, they will sell it for over $80 painted. So again, it depends how much you're gonna sell your items for, but as you can see, since you can make the same statue again and again and again out of one investment into a mold, it does not take very long to cover the cost of that, and you're making profit in a very short time. So again, I can't give you an exact cost of what it's gonna be. Here's my recommendation. If you're just starting out, keep it small, keep it cheap. Get yourself a couple smaller molds that are relatively cheap, try them out, make sure you're good at making the statues. It usually takes 1 or 2 tries at least to kind of learn the mix and to get some good statues out. Once you start selling a few of those, maybe then grow a little bit, get a few other things, but keep it small, keep it cheap, and that's the way to go for success. All right, so now we need to talk about the final thing, the actual supplies and equipment you're gonna need to produce these statues using these molds. And again, I think you're gonna be surprised with what I'm about to show you. Let's go. And now it's time to talk about supplies and equipment that you'll need to get started making concrete. A lot of people think you're gonna need some sort of big, expensive piece of equipment, like a cement mixer, or maybe even just a wheelbarrow. I'm here to tell you, you don't need any of that. We learned with our business years ago when we made stuff on a large scale, we didn't need to use that stuff. We used to have it, and then my brother actually taught me how he could make a huge vat of cement mixture without any of that expensive equipment. So what we're gonna do now is show you on a small scale how we still do it. And I'm gonna show you the tools and equipment that I literally use to make statues for myself. If you saw my last video, you saw that I make little statues to sell as merchandise after my live shows. This is the stuff I use to do it here at my home, so I don't always have to go to the shop to make it. So I'm gonna show you these things. They're dirty, they're used, sorry, but like I said, I'm cheap, and I wasn't gonna go buy all new stuff just for the video, if you know what I mean. So here we go. The first thing you need, get yourself a cheap spray bottle. This is so you can make your mold release. When you use latex molds, you have to have a mold release in the mold so that the concrete statue will release. So what is the mold release made of? Go get you some rubbing alcohol. Just cheap, basic alcohol. I use the 70%. Along with this, and I don't have it out here, get yourself a little bottle of castor oil. You can usually find that in the medicine aisle with the stomach ailment remedies, but a little bottle of castor oil. That is what your mold release is made of. That's what's in here. It's mostly alcohol. I put 1 bottle of this alcohol in here with about a spoonful of castor oil. That's it. I'm ready to go to prep my molds, which I will show in a following video, by the way. After that, go ahead and get you a couple of these cheap little scrapes. Yeah, there's better ones that are metal and that. These ones you can get for a couple bucks, and it's like a 3 or 4 pack. These are used for when you're done filling the mold. You'll have to smooth them out like a trowel. You can get yourself a trowel, but again, those are kind of pricey nowadays. These do the exact same job for smaller molds. They're fine, and they also work for scraping the molds and cleaning them after when there's little dry bits of cement that you need to get off them. So get you a couple of these. Next, probably your biggest purchase. If you don't have one already, go get yourself the cheapest drill you can find. I prefer a powered one with a cord, so they seem to work better than the batteried ones. But this is what you're going to use to mix up your cement using one of these mixing paddles. These you can find pretty much anywhere. Go to the paint section of any store that has paint and you'll find this. This is an old one that's actually broken. I just realized I'm still using it. It mixes up the cement. And what do I mix it in? I just get a couple of these buckets over here. Yes, buckets. That's what I mix it in. 2 gallon, 5 gallon, it's up to you. I always have 3 or 4 buckets around that I mix the cement in. That's literally all I use. Now, of course, I might have a couple screwdrivers and that for putting the bolts in the molds and things like that. But really, this is the equipment I use for molds. So other than this, all you're gonna need now is your actual supply, your materials, the cement, sand, gravel. Now, I've always used a mix of sand, gravel, cement that I mix together myself. However, I'm slowly coming around to the idea of these pre-mixes that you can buy that are already mixed in a bag. You can go to almost any home supply store, Home Depot, Lowe's, they will have them. They're cheap. Try to avoid the fast setting brands. Just get your basic, cheapest bag of ready mixed cement. I don't care what brand. And then here's the key, get yourself a bag of pure Portland cement. Because what you do is you're gonna add a little bit of Portland to the bucket full of the ready mixed cement, because they're always a little too light when it comes to the cement mixture in there. So adding a little bit of extra pure cement is kind of the secret to using those pre-bag mix, I've learned. So the cost of that, you know, the standard bags are usually $6-7. Sometimes you can find them for under $5. And then a bag of Portland right now is a little under 10. So if you've been keeping track, all of these together, including your startup material cost, is probably going to be under $50. That's right. Other than the molds, you're looking at about $50, and you can literally get started. Assuming that is, of course, that you have a spot in your garage to do it, or a little spot outside that's covered up. You don't want to be in open sun because it can dry the stuff too fast and hurt the molds. But that's literally all it takes. That's what I do here at home. I don't bring any equipment here other than this, and I'm able to produce a ton of small statues out of my molds in a short amount of time with very little cost. So again, molds are going to be your main upfront cost. That's really up to you how much you want to spend. I suggest keeping it smaller until you get good at it. Other than that, you're looking at maybe $50-ish, and realistically, you're good to go to start with your own side hustle or possibly full-time business. So I hope this answers some of your questions that my last video created. My next video, I'm actually going to go into more detail about the molds, how to prepare them, how to use the latex only mold, and from there I'll do a couple other videos that basically will teach you everything you need to know to give you a good leg up on starting your own business. So until then, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.